Thank you so much for joining us today on Connect and Collaborate, where we come together each day to introduce you to our network of business and community leaders and to discuss important issues that impact business in Colorado and the region. I'm Tammy Schaefer, your on-air producer, and today we are connecting with TalentFOUND, creating the talent pipeline with Stephanie Beck, Executive Director of the Workforce Development Council. Stephanie, thank you for joining us today. Glad to have you back.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you so much. As always, thank you for having us. It's such an honor to get to partner and connect and collaborate with the Business Roundtable on the radio show.
Well, we appreciate it. You bring us so much great information about the workforce here in Colorado, how it affects our economic development, education, business, and government. Just so much is impacted by the workforce. And we're really excited today to talk about the TalentFOUND 2017 Talent Pipeline Report. You have a lot of great information for us.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So normally on the show, you and I would have a guest, and we would have the guest talk about the work that they're doing to build Colorado's talent pipeline, either in their industry or in the segment of talent development that they work in. But this show, we just released the Colorado Workforce Development Council as a coalition of partners, just released our annual talent pipeline report. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of dig into what the data tells us about our talent pipeline.
Well, let's start by backing up a little bit. Tell us, what is the talent pipeline report and what's the history behind it?
Oh, great question. So the Talent Pipeline Report is an annual report that is required by the legislature. So in 2014, the state legislature passed a piece of legislation that really ingrained some of the strategies that we talk about on the show all the time, our sector strategies and our industry-led career pathways. They ingrained those into the way we should do business for talent development in Colorado. And as part of that legislation, they mandated that we, the council, would convene the Department of Higher Education, the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, the Department of Education, and the Department of Labor and Employment, that we should convene those partners every year and produce an annual report on the state of talent development in Colorado. And talent development meaning K-12 through lifelong learning, basically, and where are we in meeting businesses' needs for talent. And so other than that, the requirement is that we look at the demand for talent, so what are businesses' needs for talent, as well as the supply of talent and what we're doing to make sure that we're matching supply and demand, and that it gives us a set of data that we can look at to make informed decisions and better invest our limited resources, specifically federal and state tax dollars, in helping work with businesses to create the talent pipeline for current needs as well as in the future. Other than that, it was pretty open-ended. It was kind of like,
wow,
go do this. And so 4 years ago, we set out to decide what the talent pipeline report should be and created the first report. And this is our fourth one. So each year we work to make them a little bit different each year.
Yes, so being the fourth report, how is this one different from the past 3 years?
So each year we try to take a little bit different spin, while at the same time stay consistent enough that we can actually monitor the change and see what looks different and where things are going, so that we can use it as a measuring tool across the systems. And so the very first year, the key was that we looked at defining what we meant, what would be a high-demand job, or what would be a quality career, or how would we say that something was worth investing in or not investing in. And so as simple as that seems, it was actually a pretty big task. And we ended up getting all 4 state agencies, our council, as well as the governor's office, the Office of State Planning and Budget, the State Demographer's Office, and several other partners to all agree that we needed to come up with a common definition for the way we would define a good job in Colorado, and we labeled those top jobs.
Right.
And so in that first report, we defined what a top job was, and we set the bar that if a job is worthy of investing taxpayers' money and advocating and promoting those jobs, it should meet that minimum bar of being a top job in the state of Colorado. And so that was really the big amount of the first year. We also looked at the Colorado paradox and other data and learned some information that helped inform later reports. In the second report, we took data from the first report that really demonstrated to us that a lot of the things that we think about Colorado really are less the systemic problem and more about the demographic shifts. So in the second report, we looked a lot about those demographic shifts. How is Colorado changing? What do we need to do to adjust to meet the reality that 70% of people who live in Colorado weren't born here? Mm-hmm. And so migration into Colorado and migration out of Colorado is huge for us. And how do we make sure that we're taking that into account and adjusting our strategies based on the reality of projecting our future demographics? The third report, we took a look at the gig economy. So again, looking at top jobs, looking at demographics and closing the attainment gap, but dug a little bit deeper into the gig economy, all of those part-time jobs out there, Uber drivers and, on-demand, labor on demand, what effect that had, as well as started to look a little bit at the future of jobs, technology, and some of those things. And then now, the rest of the show, we'll talk about this fourth annual report, where what we really did is we wanted to dig in a few different ways. We wanted to really look at the future of work. What is the way the digital economy is changing? How is that affecting the jobs? What are the skills that are really needed in both technical skills and soft skills, as well as what are the, just the change in regional makeup and the differences regionally across the state. And it's important to look statewide, but we also know that there are very different economies in different parts of the state. So we dug a lot deeper in this report around regional data.
Great. We can't wait to hear more about it. Stephanie Veck with the Colorado Workforce Development Council and TalentFOUND is going to talk about the Talent Pipeline Report. Thanks so much for staying with us today here on Connect and Collaborate. And today we're connecting with TalentFOUND, creating the talent pipeline, with Stephanie Veck from the Colorado Workforce Development Center. Stephanie, it's so great to have you along, and very excited to talk about the results of the 2017 Talent Pipeline Report.
Yes, thanks for having me, Tammy. It's always nice to get to do the monthly show on TalentFOUND and the work to create the Colorado Talent Pipeline. But I'm really excited to talk about our recently released Talent Pipeline Report.
Absolutely. And we're excited to hear the results, because there's always some new information each year that can really point us in the right direction. First, in the last segment, you were talking about top jobs. Can you give us a quick how do you define top jobs? What's the criteria?
Yeah. So, as I had said, one of the keys in the beginning of creating the Talent Pipeline Report was to have some bar that we were holding ourselves accountable to in making decisions about investing taxpayers' money in talent development. And so we define for Colorado top jobs as a job that has projected high annual openings, above average growth rates, and offer a living wage. So for each of those projected high annual openings, well, across the board, we try to go conservative, because we know we want to make decisions based on conservative data, and do the right thing, but not, be using some overinflated estimates that may not hold true. So the data we use, we feel, is very solid. It's held true over the last 4 years, but I will admit that it's conservative. So when you look through the data in the Talent Pipeline Report, you'll see that we may talk about a job that's going to have, an occupation that's going to have an average of 40 openings a year. And an industry person might say, just my business is going to have those 40 openings this year. The reality is it's an in-demand job because it is growing and its projected growth. We don't really get in the debate about exactly how many, because as we all know, nobody has a crystal ball and the economy can change on a dime.
On a dime.
So, yep. So when we say projected high openings, that is, a high amount of open jobs every year, and that is expected to have average growth rates over a 10-year period of time. So if a person is planning to invest in their education and training, or a business is going to invest in their talent pipeline, they know that these occupations that you're investing in will have a decent amount of openings each year, but they will also, or that occupation is projected to grow over the next 10 years. And then we use the MIT calculator for offering a living wage. There are a bunch of different combinations for living wage, but in 2014, we chose to use a family of 3 with one person working for the state of Colorado. And in 2003, that was $17.88 an hour is what a person would need to make to just barely support a family of 3 with one person working. In 2016, as the average wage was going up, or not average, the living wage required for a family of 3 was increasing, we recognized the need to also be able to look at those entry or middle level jobs that could lead to a top job that was going to pay over $20 an hour. But we wanted to be true to our methodology, so we added a second tier of jobs, and these are jobs that pay a living wage for a single person. So they're jobs that, aren't going to support a family, but it's a great first job for someone. It's a great stepping stone to get on that career pathway to a job that could actually support a family.
Great. That's fantastic information and a good way to break it down. Now, what has changed in the top jobs over time from maybe last year to this year?
Yeah, well, I think I started to kind of say it in the earlier one, but I think the biggest eye-opening for us has been the rapid rate in which, since 2014, the amount per hour has increased. So this year, for the first time in the report, we charted the increases. And so for our Tier 1 jobs, they've gone up from $17.88 an hour in 2014 to this year's report, it's $24.19 an hour.
Wow.
So for a person to work and support a family of 3 in Colorado, and that's the statewide average. Of course, there are some areas that are much more expensive to live in,
right, and
the wage would be higher. But statewide for the state, it's $24.19 an hour. And then for those Tier 2, last year it was which was the first year we did Tier 2, was $11.33 an hour, and this year it's $11.82 an hour. Excuse me. So a single person cost of living has gone up by 50 cents an hour, and for a family of 3, it's gone up about $1.50 an hour. So that's a pretty significant jump, and that's been consistent every year since we've started doing the Talent Pipeline Report.
Now, when you say that those numbers, that the cost of living for a family of 3 with one person working is the $24.19 per hour, that's the cost of living, not what the typical wages are, not an average wage.
Right. That is the cost of living. So it's the bare minimum of what it costs you to be able to pay the typical living expenses of a family, housing, food, clothing, the typical things. It's not by any means middle class or defines any other way the quality of life other than you just have the bare minimum of what you need to support your family without any assistance.
Now, I know we want to talk quickly about the demand, supply, and the recommendations from the Talent Pipeline Report, but can you tell us what the actual average wages in those areas to compare?
So average wages in would vary. So we could break down average wage by geography. We can break it down by occupation. What I can say is that it varies by industry.
Sure.
The industries that are more, that are in high demand are more likely to meet these rates. So in order for a job to be on the top jobs list, it has to pay at least that living wage in order to be on the top jobs list. I don't have the data in front of me of what the averages are, because we really focus on the top jobs and making sure that we're aligning with those.
And that's the point of your research as well. Yes. Right. Okay, so let's talk about how the talent pipeline report is laid out. You're talking about demand, supply, and then recommendations for making those
right.
together.
So the most important thing is we could have the best workforce and education systems in the world, but if we don't make sure that they're aligned with the demands of employers, if we aren't training people in skills and competencies that employers need, then we're failing our students and job seekers, because they might be getting a world-class education, but if it isn't a world-class education and something that they could actually have a career in and recoup the cost of that education and provide for themselves, we haven't we haven't met the whole need of the individual person, nor are we meeting the need of businesses. So a big part of the report is to look at what demand is. And so when you dig into the report, you'll see that in top jobs in Colorado, the Tier 1 jobs are primarily 23% of Tier 1 jobs in Colorado are healthcare practitioners and technical. 20% of the top jobs in Colorado are in management and business operations, kind of the cross-board occupations that all businesses need to be successful. And then when you look at the Tier 2 jobs, 21% of all jobs in Tier 2 fall in construction and extraction industries, and 16% fall in office and administrative support.
Okay.
So some of the other cool things, another thing that we really looked at this year is by the which occupations have been the most volatile over time, and which ones have been the most stable over time. That was really interesting. So won't surprise most people is the most volatile. We looked at a 10-year snapshot. So from 2006 to 2016, the most volatile, so these are the jobs that declined during the recession. Most of them dipped right around mid-2010 and then gradually started coming up. Some of them, actually most of them, still haven't recovered to the full employment level that they were at back in 2006. And those primarily are construction laborers, carpenters, frontline supervisors in construction trades, plumbers, pipe fitters, and steam fitters. And I think what this really tells us is those jobs have come back, but they've come back, as we've talked about on previous shows, in a very different way. They are more technical, they require more skills, and they require fewer people to do the work. So there may not be as many jobs, but they pay really well, they're more technical, and over time they'll probably prove out to be more stable because of the technical nature and need of those jobs.
Right. I'm looking at the Talent Pipeline report here on the internet. You can find that at, let's see, you go to www.colorado.gov and a little bit more. Can you give us a direct one there? But you can see exactly where it almost has come out to the number of jobs, but the number of jobs is less on the end where it's recovered. So like you said.
Exactly. Yep. And the easiest way to find it, honestly, is just Google Colorado Talent Pipeline Report. And after the two ads, it'll be the very first thing that pops up if you just Google Colorado Talent Pipeline Report.
Yes, so if you're not driving, you can follow along with us. We
that's
have
right.
about 30 seconds left here. And, you were talking about those volatile occupations. Can you give us a quick view of most stable?
So the most stable occupations, and these four occupations never dipped in the last 10 years during the recession. They've had a steady decline the entire time. Registered nurses, post-secondary teachers, business operations specialists, and so someone who specializes in any type of business operations, like an accountant, for example, and home health aides.
Those are the people we always need to be at the ready and doing the work, right? We will be back with more with Stephanie Veck from TalentFOUND. We are so glad you're staying with us today here on Connect and Collaborate, where we are connecting with TalentFOUND, creating the talent pipeline with Stephanie Veck, Director of the Colorado Workforce Development Council. Stephanie, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Tammy, and thanks for letting us talk about the recently released Talent Pipeline Report.
Yes, absolutely. And folks, if you want to follow along, the Colorado Talent Pipeline Report, look for, just Google 2017 Colorado Talent Pipeline Report, and it should come up. You'll also find it on TalentFOUND. Stephanie, we were talking about the demand, how you determine, what jobs are going to be stable, going to have the most openings. And now I'm sure it's important to make sure you're watching that demand to supply. So what does that look like?
Right. Well, it's really important. What we've really shifted over the last year or so, we've put a lot of focus on shifting to competency-based. In our show last month, I had Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid from the Department of Higher Ed come talk about the role of competency-based higher education. And so as we're starting to look at that, it's really important to look at the data around skills. And what are the skills that businesses need, that these occupations need for a person to be successful, so that our education and training systems can adjust and adapt, and that people can actually hire based on the skills that people need, that are needed in the job, and people can get the right training and education to match those skill sets that are needed. And so in the report, we look at in-demand skills in two areas, in hard skills or technical skills, and in soft skills or foundational skills. And so it's pretty interesting, not super surprising, but interesting. Under hard skills, in the report, we really looked at all of the different job ads all across Colorado that have been posted, and we've been able to determine that about almost 90% of all jobs in Colorado get posted online. So, of course, You've got kind of the small mom-and-pop businesses that are hiring more by referrals, or they're using like a workforce center only. But even with workforce centers, those jobs get posted online through Connecting Colorado. So by using tools that pull data based on all online job postings, we're really probably only eliminating like executive searches and some of those really specialized job postings, or very, very small businesses that are hiring based on family and referrals. So in general, based on looking at all of the online job postings in Colorado in 2017, the hard skills that are the most in demand, a majority of those are in software development. So you've got Linux and Java and Freight Plus software development specific requirements on hard skills. You've also got a lot around quality assurance and customer relationship management, using technology for customer relationship management, a lot of technical support. The biggest increase was actually in Linux, a 12% increase in that. And then second was in quality control, with actually 11.85% increase in quality control. And then as we looked at all of those healthcare careers, really looking at what are the skills that show up the most in job postings, there were 9,000, almost 10,000, 9,900 job postings that specifically posted for skills in pediatrics. Wow. So those are kind of where our technical skills, the greatest number of requests for technical skills are coming from. And then in the soft skills, the foundational skills. So these are things that, we all, would have always referred to these as those, you have aptitude and attitude. These are kind of the attitude skills that people are looking for. And when folks are looking at the soft skills, we're really looking at things like oral and written communications. That bumped up a bit. Whether someone's detail-oriented, that actually increased by over 6%. The biggest jump, and I always get chuckles, I've presented this data at a few different things so far, and everybody's always like, really, what made that change? But the greatest change were in actually two different areas, one being integrity. So way more jobs out, 58,000 job ads in Colorado last year, specifically named integrity as a core skill that they need people to have. And then another big jump, 18% jump, was in creativity. So more and more businesses are requiring, job postings are requiring creativity, problem solving, integrity, detail-oriented, oral and written communication skills, being team-oriented. it's becoming more important to employers, so much so that they're actually posting those in their job applications when they're looking for people. And so what we're doing to start to look at that is we have entered into a partnership with a Colorado company, actually one of our Colorado companies to watch from last year, because you know I always love plugging that, is Perrin. They are working with us, and we're seeking businesses that are interested in partnering with us to help identify the foundational skills that are needed in occupations that cut across all of those business operation occupations. So your salespeople, your people that work behind the scenes in businesses to make the business operate. And so if any of our listeners are interested in finding out what this looks like and how to get involved, there is a section in the middle of the Talent Pipeline report around page 22 that can tell them how to get involved in helping us identify what those most critical foundational skills are for the talent of the future.
That's incredible, and those are really interesting specifics for job openings. Integrity,
yes.
Specifically. Creativity, I think, is maybe seeing a resurgence probably isn't the right word, but a peak for creativity.
Yeah, well, I think that creativity and the ability to apply these, what people would always have considered soft skills, the ability to actually use those daily, to be creative in how you solve problems, to think outside the box. There used to be, there were an awful lot of jobs that were assembly line type jobs of widgets, counting the widgets that didn't, it didn't involve a lot of creativity. There are less and less of those jobs where people really, every day in every decision that they make, they need to be able to come to it with a creative mindset.
That's a wonderful, just piece of information to be able to include and know where the trends are going. We have a little over 2 minutes here to finish up this segment, and we're talking about the supply. What else would you like to hit on before we move on to recommendations later?
Tammy, one of the biggest ahas, I think, is in thinking about our supply is we all talk about the unemployment rate, right? And so you'll hear policymakers and folks from all over the country, and Colorado included, brag about how low our unemployment rate is. And in the report, we look at the regional unemployment rate, so not just the statewide rate, which is now at 2.9%, but also at the regional rates. And the rates in Colorado, we needed to have a line in the sand that we were going to compare, so we decided to just go with June of last year as the end of most of the program year, fiscal year for the state. So as of June of last year, we had unemployment rates as low as 2.1% in the state and as high as 4%. But the unemployment rate really only tells a part of the story. The unemployment rate tells us the number of people who are actively looking for jobs and are not employed. What it doesn't tell us is it doesn't tell us about all of the people that are unemployed or underemployed and aren't out there in the workforce looking at work. So in this year's report, we tried to look a little bit more at untapped talent. So places where certain demographics have a higher unemployment rate than the average, but also on page 28 there is a chart on the labor force participation rate. And so for Colorado, our labor force participation rate, what this means is a person who is within, an adult, working, that eligible adult to be in the workforce, whether they're choosing to participate in the workforce or not. And we've got rates as low as 50 or 47% in Colorado.
Yeah.
We have some areas in Colorado that, less than half of the adults that could be in the workforce working are actually showing up in our workforce.
And Stephanie, that's a really important distinction that I think a lot of those unemployment rates don't show us. Let's talk about that more when we come back.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks so much for staying with us today. We are talking with Stephanie Veck, TalentFOUND and you know, I'm sorry, creating the talent pipeline. I had my paper flipped over. I'm sorry, Stephanie.
No worries, Tammy. Thank you so much.
Oh, we're so happy to have you and for you to be tolerant of me and my mistakes as well. So we're talking about the 2017 Colorado Talent Pipeline Report, and you can find that just by Googling the Colorado Talent Pipeline Report. That will come up, and you'll see some really fantastic information. You guys do such a great job, Stephanie, of bringing all of this data together.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's really, this is one of the longer reports that we've ever done,
Really?
And we always try to cut it back and not have as much information, but there was so much good information that we decided, it's longer, but there are a lot of charts, a lot of numbers, and a lot of graphics, so even though it feels long, it's a really quick read, unless you're like me and you like to really get deep into the data. But
and critical then to be able to look back on it as you move forward, so you need to have all that information. We were just talking as we finished the last segment about the labor force participation rate, which is reflected differently than that unemployment rate we always hear about.
Right. So the labor force participation rate are the adults who are of working age and able to work, and what percentage of them are choosing to participate in the workforce, either by having a job and working, even if it's a part-time job, or by actively seeking work so that they show up in the unemployment rate. And so the folks, when we look at areas, our labor force participation rate ranges from about 48% all the way up to 72%. And so depending on where you live, as few as 50% of the adults in your area are actively working or pursuing work. And that gives us a real opportunity to say, what can we do to make work more attractive to those individuals so that they will work? Or how can we address challenges and issues that are preventing people from actively participating in the labor market, get them back in the labor market and working, whether that is a person with a disability to make it more possible for them to be able to get a job and keep a job, whether it is a person who's maybe been formerly incarcerated and they've given up, they don't have hope because they were rejected so many times, someone doesn't want to hire someone with a record. How can we figure out how to make it better and easier for businesses to give these individuals a chance so that they can prove themselves and become contributing members of our workforce? And so the report really kind of digs into some of those opportunities. Another opportunity that's missed that we talk about in the report a lot is that the underutilization of women in our workforce.
Yes.
And the report really dug in a little bit. We partnered with Kaktia Roy, who is the CEO of her own company that really focuses on the value of investing in diversity and gender equity with women in the workforce. And so while women make up almost half of Colorado's workforce, they are more than twice as likely as men to only work part-time. And so if you think about, not only are they making up half of our workforce, if they're only working part-time, then that's not the full contribution that we need them to be working as our economy grows. And so there's a great report in our appendix about increasing the number of women that are working and the amount that it makes it possible for women to work. And some of those strategies include affordable child care. If you can't, I was just talking to my mom this morning, one of my nieces, her husband works a full-time Monday through Friday job. She works a part-time Saturday and Sunday job because otherwise it doesn't make sense for her to work. If she's going to work and paying somebody else to raise her child, and she's going to net maybe a couple dollars an hour, it doesn't make sense. So their solution is she's decided to work weekends, which really doesn't make for a great family life, but it works for them as a young couple. And so how can we find some solutions to making it more possible for more people to be actively contributing and actively participating in our workforce?
Right, and getting that family life that they desire. To make it work for them. So we were talking also about, earlier in the show, we were talking about the average salary, and I know you have great information on the social service sector. It's really interesting.
Yeah, you had asked me how average salary compared to living wage, and we really don't look at it that way in the report, but the one thing that we do is we wanted to look at, the Office of Economic Development had done a study on perceived costs and benefits of living and working in Colorado compared to other states. And overall, Colorado rates really high on the benefits and the reputation of living here, and overall, the perceived cost of living is kind of out of line with our comparable states. People believe that it costs more to live here. And so we wanted to look a little bit more into the reality of that. And so what we looked at is there are top jobs, as we've talked about, that are worthy of our reputation or of investment, but we also have to look at the social services sector. So those early childhood educators that don't get paid a great wage, but the rest of us can't be successful without having good quality daycare. School teachers, home health aides, a lot of really important social service type jobs that are critically important. And so one of the things we did look at is how the average salary in Colorado and other states stack up to the living wage of a family of three in those states. And so although Colorado is comparable to other states, when you look at the average salary that someone working in the community and social services sector, how that compares to other states, we are comparable, but a person is only making less than half of what they really need to make to support a family of three in that sector. And that's just not okay. We've got to figure out how we can make sure that people who are doing those jobs that we all need in order to be successful in our own lives are making a living wage to be able to support their family and want to be in the workforce, because they will eventually fall out of the workforce if it's not affordable for them to work.
Well, and I've been seeing articles to that point all over. California is an example too, where the people who are doing those critical jobs, like you said, home health care, teaching school, nurses, they can't live in the cities where they're providing their work. What happens? Right. I mean, that is going to have to make the culture crumble a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, or we have to just look differently at how we do things and the cost of education. And so one of the big things that we dig into in the report, in addition to skills, is the value of work-based learning. And how can we start to embed work-based learning and experiential learning opportunities earlier in pipeline development? So someone can start learning on the job as early as high school, start getting credentials and certificates that qualify them for better jobs, and start to balance things out. Also bring into alignment the cost of education and degrees for certain occupations that aren't going to return a wage that justifies the cost of that education. And how can we bring that into balance, either by loan forgiveness for certain occupations, things like that. There's a whole variety of strategies that can be done, but I think the really digging into our work-based learning continuum and the strategies that go along with that will be a critical part in meeting those needs. And those are, laid out, some of the things that we laid out in the last segment of the report, which are the recommendations.
Right. Tell us more. We have less than 2 minutes left, so give us the rundown.
So we absolutely should. So when someone goes to the report, what they will find in the back of the report is a follow-up from last year. So as we've said, this is a four-year report. One of the things that we do each year is to report out on how we've met, what we've done towards the recommendation from the previous year's reports. And then this year, we really looked at those priorities from before and what still needs to be done. We identified 4 problem statements, 4 recommendations, and then under each of those recommendations, some individual strategies that can be utilized either at the local level, at the state level, or broadly by a community to help address the issues and the challenges. So those recommendations are to accelerate and deepen the partnerships among education, business, and industry to develop Colorado's talent. A lot of continuing to do what we're already doing, but investing more deeply in those things. Number 2 is to ensure that Coloradans have the skills that they need to succeed and grow in the state's economy and in the future. So really focusing on those hard and soft skills and making sure that we are creating generations of lifelong learners versus training someone for one specific job that might go away. Expansion of work-based learning opportunities is a part of that. The third recommendation is to mobilize Colorado's untapped talent. So really talking what we've just talked about, the labor participation,
and
women,
Stephanie,
people with disabilities.
We have to wrap it up. And more information, Google the Colorado Talent Pipeline Report. You'll find out everything you want.
Thank you so much, Tammy.
Thanks, Stephanie.